Hey there. On the 20th of September, everyone was expecting Putin to come out to the Russian people and make a statement regarding the referenda on the occupied territories and the potential mobilization that will appear in the Russian society because the war is a little bit of not going to the plan. Unfortunately, he never appeared. But on the 21st of September, Russian society woke up to the news that Putin has released pre-recorded message of him addressing the nation and declaring that the partial mobilization is in order. It was an act of desperation. Let's talk about this. Let's just start by the fact that he's releasing a pre-recorded statement instead of doing a live event. So that just shows how indecisive he is, and he's looking for ways out, but he cannot find any. But let's talk on the mobilization or partial mobilization, as Putin put it. Obviously, partial is just as temporary as there was no mobilization at all, because as the partial part will fail to reach the sufficient number of people that they want to get into the army, they will slowly increase the size of and scale of the mobilization. So let's not kid ourselves that it's just a partly mobilization. It just means that it's going to be scaling up, which is actually, one might say, even worse situation for the Russians, because that will take even longer time. But let's get point by point. So I'm going to link the post that I did yesterday about the potential mobilization in Russia of all the rumors that happened. And there I described in major points, and also that people in comments are writing a lot of the reasons why mobilization in Russia is pretty stupid. So refer to that one, but I'm going to cover some of them here. Firstly, we need to understand that there will be little to no immediate impact on the war right now, right? Mobilization and pronouncing mobilization does not magically conjure you a 1,000,000-man army that just ready to fight, that have the motivated abilities, are fully equipped and trained. That is just not how it works. What we should expect is actually that maybe even Ukraine have some kind of a temporary advantage, because the resources will be sent to Russia to facilitate training and facilitate maybe also equipment production and so on and so on. So there is need to be resources dedicated to get the people that will get mobilized up to speed. There's going to be a lengthy process for all those people that get mobilized. And time is not what Russia has. They are already running on a clock. Ukraine is attacking. They missed the opportunity. One of the biggest things that all of the analysts are saying is that mobilization needed to happen like 3-4 months ago, right after the Kyiv offensive didn't produce results. At that point, the mobilization needed to be declared. Right now, it's extremely late. The fact that it's going to be even partial mobilization is even worse, because it's just going to take even longer. This will also increase the economic burden on Russia, because some of the factories will need to produce gear for the mobilized people. All the equipment that was in storage and just couldn't be used by the regular forces within Russia because it was unusable or not fixed will need to get fixed. So we can see a lot of that being handed over to the businesses in Russia by an order of the government. This is going to damage already struggling economy. Moreover, in a statement, Putin is saying that all of the payments will be done to the people in the military. So it's not going to be just mobilization for the sake of it. They're also going to pay for it. So that means that the Russian bill is going to increase for this war dramatically. We knew that at the current rate, Russia had still reserves for about a year and a half, 2 years conflict. They could have done it until they needed to start cutting things off. With a mobilized population, this will increase significantly. There is other things that are matters discussing about why mobilization is a bad idea. Read them in a comment section. I've posted the link inside the description of this video. More importantly, let's talk about why this is a disaster for Putin, both personally and for his regime at all. We need to understand that mobilization is not something that they did because everything was nice, fine, and dandy. They did it because they were looking for ways out. And after blackmailing of and political pressure on the European Union, after receiving no thanks from the supporters from an Asian market, they basically realized that they have like no allies, that they have no resources, that they have very little political clout by this point, and they are desperate. So this was the act of desperation, and the growing pressure and inability to find exit is basically plugging in the holes in a sinking ship with whatever produce you have. Mobilization is a no-way back approach. If there is no small victory that Putin can declare after pronouncing mobilization, and after mobilized people will get to the battle lines and start dying, there is no option for Putin then to come back and say, well, we did a small victory, we helped secure the borders of the DPR, LPR, or we secured Crimea. There is nothing there. This is just going to be antagonizing to the whole world. This is going to be completely no way back for the Russian people. So once the war is won by Ukraine, we might even see Putin essentially being torn apart by his own people. But will this mean that the Russian people right now go into protests on the Russian street and demand resignation of the government, demand resignation of Putin, and try to get his head or storm the Capitol building? No. You're severely underestimating the compliance and inertia that is permeated in the Russian society. They are sheeple to the worst of the extent. They are ready to be led to slaughter. We already saw that. The biggest example is that we saw yesterday Iran. There was a girl that was murdered by the fact that she wore hijab or burqa incorrectly, and that raised major protests in the country. And even if they don't lead anything, it was just a show of how the public disagreement would look like in a country that doesn't really agree with what the leadership is doing. That is not what's happening in Russia. There's been more than 50,000 dead Russians, and we don't see a lot of people being really bothered by it. They still feel it's business as usual. But the community's dread is going to rise up. As the mobilized people get mowed down and the mobilization will become more and more severe, at some point the Russian society will break, especially now that we're going to see that Ukraine is going to probably secure a couple of more victories before the end of this year, and it's going to be a big destabilizing factor in Russia. In the long term, mobilization means that this war is just going to get prolonged. That means there's going to be a lot more Ukrainians that are going to suffer, going to get tortured, going to die. There's going to be a lot more weapons and artillery shells fired at the Ukrainian territory. This awful war, unprovoked war, this war of aggression from the Russian Federation, and now we can say also the Russian people, is basically going to be torturing the European continent for a lot longer. So right now, everything that we should take away from this is that we need to mobilize ourselves to help and support Ukraine. Ukraine is going to have long days ahead, especially when the waves of the mobilized people will come. They will not produce significant gains in the occupied territories, but we might see Ukrainians struggle at some point. But I think that the Western supply of weapons, the training that the Western allies are giving us, and as the more and more advanced and the quantity of weapons will come in, Ukraine is going to do better and better and better. There is no other option. Mobilization is not a magic pill that just resolves this conflict. It just makes the fact that conflict is going to end with Putin hanging. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. Slava Ukraini, support Ukraine, subscribe to this channel, and thank you so much to all of my wonderful patrons and supporters. See you next time.